Good evening, everybody. I declare the meeting open and note that we are recording and live streaming our council meeting. I'd like to call upon Councillor Barry Winmar to present the Welcome to Country.
Thank you, Your Worship. I'd like to acknowledge my elders past and present and that we are on Noongar country this evening. Ngalak nyining kurlong, kura ngalak noich, nija Noongar boja. Noongar mert jerpen nining, nija kwabadok Noongar boja kurlong. From the beginning of time to the end, this is Noongar country. Noongar people have been graceful keepers of our nation for many, many years. Ngala jerpen mama boja ngala bala mama kwab. Ngala court jerpen nija ngala maya nyining Noongar boja. We respect the earth, our mother, and understand that we belong to her. She does not belong to us. In all her beauty we find comfort, well-being and life that creates a home for everyone that has become a keeper of Noongar country. Jinidin karajing maya, jurpan nija wern Noongar boja ngala maya borda. Look, listen, understand and embrace all the elements of Noongar country that is forever our home. Kai wanju, ngan Barry Winmar, wajak baladong maman, ngan kurt jurpan, nunuk nija Noongar boja, dajli wangani noich Noongar boja. Hello and welcome. My name is Barry Winmar. I'm a Wajak Baladong man and my heart is happy as we're gathered on Noongar country and speaking here on Noongar country tonight.
Thank you, Councillor Winmar, and I'd like to acknowledge that we meet here on the land of the Noongar people and pay our respects to elders past, present. And call upon Councillor Brown to read the dedication.
Thank you, Your Worship. May we, the elected members of the City of Kwinana, have the wisdom to consider all matters before us with due consideration, integrity and respect for the Council Chamber. May the decisions made be in good faith and always in the best interest of the greater Kwinana community that we serve.
Thank you, Councillor Brown. We have attendance, apology and leave previously approved to Councillor Dennis Wood. There are no members of the public for public question time. There is nothing on item 6, 6.2, 6.3. Item 7, 7.1 is confirmation of minutes of our ordinary council meeting held on the 25th of May 2022. Any issues with those minutes? If not, would somebody like to move? Move Councillor Rouse, second Councillor Brown. Thank you. Councillor Rouse or Councillor Brown, do you wish to speak on the minutes? Anybody wish to speak against? I shall put it to the vote. All in favour? Against? So carried. Item 7.2, minutes of our special council meeting held on the 30th of May. Would somebody like to move those minutes? Move Councillor S. Wood, seconded Councillor Winmar. Councillor Wood, Councillor Winmar. Anybody wish to speak against? Shall put it to the vote. All in favour? Against? So moved. Item 8, declarations of interest. I have an interest similar to Councillor Rouse, declaring an impartiality interest on item 17.1, which is the Joint Development Assessment Panel application for a childcare centre on Bertram Road, Wellard. This is due to me being a member of the Outer Metropolitan Joint Development Assessment Panel. Therefore, I'm required to consider the application and the report of the City of Kwinana as the responsible authority when this matter comes before the JDAP for assessment.
Yeah, same declaration, same item, Your Worship.
Thank you. Are there any other declarations of interest? Are there any requests for leave of absence? There is nothing on item 10, 11, 12 or 13. Item 14, 14.1 is a management agreement for Smirks Heritage Site, Kwinana Heritage Group. Is there any questions of the CEO or the officers? Thank you. We have a recommendation. Would somebody like to move that way? Move Councillor Kearney, second Councillor Winmar. Councillor Kearney, would you like to speak on the item?
The Smerts Cottage, there's hopefully this will help guide them into a good direction with the city's help. I think it's a great thing, and there's a lot of issues down there, but hopefully this will help them work through it. So just some positive things, I hope.
Thank you. Councillor Winmar? Anybody wish to speak against? I shall put it to the vote. All in favour? Against? So carried. Item 14.2 is our Community Infrastructure Plan Review. Our Director of City Life, I'll ask to give us an overview, given it is such a significant document. But before doing so, was there any questions? We can wait until after the overview, maybe. Thank you.
Thank you, Madam Chair. So, the Community Infrastructure Plan presented tonight is our strategic framework for facilities over the next 15 years. And really, we're just asking you to endorse that plan tonight so we can go out for public comment. It's a standalone plan, but it also meets the SPP 3.6 and obviously the scheme amendment, which also Maria will be presenting tonight. The Community Infrastructure Plan is an evolving document, which is good. So obviously this document evolves over time, and we've done reviews in 2009, 2015, 2018, and now 2021. And I'll really imagine that we'll probably be reviewing this again as our demographics change once more in a few years' time as well. The key changes in the review is obviously some amendments to the facility provision ratios, which aligns to State Planning Policy 3.6. And also facility naming conventions as well. So we've changed the names. In previous names, we called them small community facility or sporting pavilion. So we've changed the small community facility to a change room. It just explains what that facility is in a clearer way. So really what it is, it's a change room with a canteen facility and toilet facilities. And we've changed sports pavilion to community facility because a lot of these facilities aren't just for sporting groups, they're for community groups, play groups and a range of different uses. And also we've rationalised some of our planned facilities. So in previous CIPs we planned for numerous standalone facilities, but in this review we've amalgamated some of these to co-locate uses into more community hubs. And really the development of community hubs is really leading practice. So obviously what we're trying to do is use our resources more efficiently and co-locate services and activities in one location. So you'll see in the CIP we've amalgamated standalone facilities and replaced them with either a district or larger multifunctional facilities. So we'll have less standalone local smaller facilities and larger facilities that can be used by a multitude of organisation. And that's about it. Thanks, Madam Chair.
Thank you very much. Are there any questions? I have a question, and I suppose it might come down to a future budget item. We're talking about the need to upgrade an animal shelter, but it's not until 2000, well, it was reviewed in the 2019 Community Infrastructure Program, and then it was noted again in 2015, and here we are in 2022, yet it doesn't seem to be ready to be improved until, I think it's about, I lost my point, I think it's about 2026. I had thought that was one of our potential priorities given the probably inadequate state of the facilities.
Through your worship, there were some budget items in the last round of the budget, in the last probably 2 years ago, where we had some of those more urgent welfare issues and OSH issues associated with the existing animal facility at the depot addressed. So they have now been completed. The issue is capacity and growth and also best use of the depot land. So over the last 6 months, the team has been working on looking at what are those other options, shared service arrangements with our joint councils on neighbouring sides, looking at a whole range of other possibilities. They appear to now have been exhausted, and I think that's why it was pushed out. and we would be looking at developing that business case further into the coming years. It is an item that is would need to be fully funded, or source of grant funding or any other options through our municipal budgets.
Thank you. I am aware that there was a figure of $500,000 for the upgrade. So look forward to those discussions coming up, probably the 23-24 budget. Are there any other questions? We have a recommendation. Moved Councillor Winmar, seconded Councillor Rouse. Councillor Winmar, do you wish to speak on the item?
Yes, thank you, Worship. Commend the officers on the comprehensive report and the data that's in there. There's a bit of historical information to their standalone facilities as the small groups that they were previously. I'm definitely aware that the consistency in the naming is going to make it a lot easier for families that are moving in the growing area to be able to identify and associate and link in with those community facilities as they become more readily accessible and available. And it also is a great opportunity to update a lot of the infrastructure from the days from the old parks and the smaller sites that we have. So commend the report to the council. Thank you.
Thank you. Councillor Rouse? Thank you. I'd just like to, if I can, before we pass, just give some positive feedback. Many people I've ran into recently, in fact, the couple with a COP event today, someone from Bayswater was saying how they've been coming regularly to Kwinana and they just can't believe what great facilities we have, our parks, our gardens, and what a clean and tidy city. So I just thought, whilst we're dealing with our community infrastructure plan, it's nice always to feedback a bouquet to the council. Thank you. Thank you. Anybody wish to speak against? I shall put it to the vote. All in favour? Against? So carried. There is nothing on item 15. Item 16.1 is our adoption of revised amendment number 145 to the local planning scheme under the development contribution areas 8 to 15 for the purpose of advertising. So I'm going to ask Ms Cook to provide an overview, and then if there are any questions that might arise. Thank you.
Thank you, Your Worship. Councillors, Amendment 145 has been on a long and extensive journey over the many years, last adopted by Council back in January 2019 and then modified in 2020 with some adjustments. And as soon as Council officers submitted that to the department, it was, I guess, held in abeyance for some period while the State Planning Policy 3.6 was then being reviewed and ultimately adopted. And with that came a number of adjustments. So the State Planning Policy, one of the key elements of that policy was to ensure that community infrastructure contributions that were payable by developers were capped at $5,000 per lot. So once that decision was made, the Minister wrote to Council and requested a number of changes to our almost finalised Amendment 145. And one of those big ticket items that we've just heard from the Director City Life today was around the Community Infrastructure Plan. So it required a review of the CIP in accordance with the standards set by the State Planning Policy. It required City Office to do an extensive review of the actual costs associated with each and every one of those facilities, looking at making sure that what we were, I guess, costing as part of those facilities wasn't considered gold plating but essential to our community needs. And that there was a clear need and nexus between our demographic and the facility that was being provided. So there was quite a lot of rigour that went into reviewing each and every item following the CIP being reviewed. And what we have before you today is now a reviewed amendment which basically aligns itself with a community infrastructure plan and its timing, makes clear the costs to the developers for those infrastructure items, many of which are already being collected on as part of our interim arrangements, and sets caps which are all under that $5,000 cap. So the report tonight is really to allow for further consultation to occur. This amendment was last advertised back in 2015. So the department made it very clear that whilst it has been on an extensive journey, it was important that we still go back out to the developers for another 60-day period to allow for them to digest the review, to provide comment on that, and then bring that back to council. So we're expecting to, through that 60-day period, have some serious, sessions with the developers in particular as the key stakeholders who will be directly impacted by this amendment in a positive way, as all costs have come down.
So if I can just ask a question in relation to clause 9.3.4, which appears on page 244 of the report. We're talking about the reimbursements of the DCP funds. So what you're anticipating, if it's going to be in favour of the developers, then there'll be a claim to the city for reimbursement of those funds, but only if there are sufficient funds available within the relevant DCP account. And if there aren't sufficient funds, they'll have to just wait until they become available. Okay.
So at the moment, just to add further, we currently collect at a much higher rate than what is now being considered by council. We also have a 30% contingency on that rate, and they are all subject to very specific provisional agreements. So developers know that the current situation is a provisional one at the moment and have entered into agreements at every stage of their development on that basis. So this is now, should it be accepted by council, go through an advertising, possibly some changes made following the advertising, and then submitted and with hopefully gazetted by the state government. We'll have our new rates in place, which will then mean those provisional agreements could be cleaned up. And that's where that reconciliation will come into play. And we've made sure that in protecting those reserves that we have in place for each of the DCAs, that there are provisions there and criteria as to how that refunding or reconciliation may take place. In some cases, there may not be a refunding, might just go as a credit against future stages, for example. It really will come down to each individual development.
Any questions? Thank you. I'd actually like to move this item so I can speak to it. Do we have a seconder? Thank you. So it's moved Mayor, seconded Councillor Rouse. I'd just like to commend the officers because especially for the benefit of the newer councillors, having been on the journey for these particular DCA areas for such a long time, and the City of Kwinana was one of the second councils in Perth or WA to actually put in the developer contribution schemes. So we've certainly learnt a lot and come a long way, but it's been significantly complex, very long, and there's sometimes been changing goalposts, such as what we've seen here. And we've had some really good staff working on this, and I'd just like to really, in moving this item, commend that it gets carried by council, and again thank the staff for all their efforts for a very long time in getting this to advertisement. Thank you. Councillor Rouse. Thank you. Anybody wish to speak against? I shall put it to the vote. All in favour? Against? So carried. Okay. Thank you. Item 17.1 is the Joint Development Assessment Panel application for a childcare centre on lot 501 Bertram Road in Wellard. And noting that Councillor Rouse and I have an impartiality interest as members of the Metropolitan Outer Joint Development Assessment Panel. Are there any questions of the officers on this application? If not, we have a recommendation. Would somebody like to move that way? Thank you. Move Councillor S. Wood, seconded to Councillor Winmar. Councillor Wood, would you like to speak on the item? Councillor Winmar? Anybody like to speak against the item? I shall put it to the vote. All in favour? Against? So carried. Item 18.1 is our quarterly performance report for our strategic community plan and corporate business plan for our third quarter, January to March 2022. Are there any questions of the officers in relation to this report? Okay, just excuse me for a moment. Just seeing if I've highlighted some areas. No, not. Thank you. Do we have somebody happy to move? Moved Councillor Winmar, seconded to Councillor Brown. Councillor Winmar, do you wish to speak on the item? Councillor Brown. Anybody wish to speak against the item? I shall put it to the vote. All in favour? Against? So carried. Item 18.2 is proposed CAT amendment local law for 2022. Are there any questions of council?
Yes, just one, Your Worship. When we first proposed our original laws back in, was it January 2020? January 2021, we had some comments and submissions from the Department of Local Government. Did we receive any comments or submissions from the Department of Local Government after we during the consultation period when we proposed the 2022 laws?
Through the Chair, Russell Mark, Manager of Governance and Legal. We received comments from the department on both occasions. The law went out for public comment. In the first instance, when the law was drafted in such a manner that it required cats to effectively be confined to the owner's property, we received clear advice that that section would be likely to be requested to be removed from the Joint Standing Committee if we proceeded with it. And on that basis, and on the basis of the other 40 public submissions, the law was amended to its current form, which was that cats were allowed in a public place as long as they were under effective control, which is essentially the position that we have with dogs. The feedback on that second occasion was that and I quote the department, as a result, it is possible the delegated legislation committee may raise concerns with this clause. So that was the wording we had at the time. And knowing that Northam and Narrogin had almost identical provisions, we proceeded with the law on that basis. And I do note some 8 local governments have had to give similar undertakings in the period of 2015 to April 2021, which is when the records finished. So it's not by any means unheard of.
Supplementary question. Given that Northam, we modelled or felt, I suppose, a bit of comfort going ahead that Northam and Narrogin had been permitted those clauses, was that through the Joint Standing Committee on Delegated Legislation as well?
Through the Chair, yes, those local laws would have had to have passed the Joint Standing Committee as well.
So if there was precedent, is there ability to appeal or advocate to the Joint Standing Committee?
I have approached the Joint Standing Committee and they are receptive to comments when we provide the undertaking that's proposed tonight, and we certainly intend to make the comment back to the Joint Standing Committee, but unfortunately there's no appeal mechanisms under the Local Government Act that I'm aware of.
Okay, so just to be clear, there is precedent for 2 other councils, but there's about 8 other councils similar to the City of Kwinana who have been rejected or a potential motion of disallowance in relation to this particular clause.
To be clear, in relation to various clauses, not
just
necessarily
particular.
just in this. The point I was making was it's not unusual for local governments to incur these hiccups along the line when making a local law.
So, sorry, just ask another question. the whole rationale behind this local law was to try and protect our fauna, birds, reptiles, etc. in public places and reserves. So what can we do now if we have to remove this cats wandering clause? What protection do we have as residents?
Through the chair, the local law will continue to have the provision requiring a permit from the local government if you are to keep more than 2 cats. We're also now proposing to implement cat prohibited areas across 10 key locations within the district. So that's one mechanism. Although it's not clearly as strict as the original intention of this local law, it certainly does provide some level of comfort that we are taking steps to control cats in key areas.
And we may very well need to take this question on notice, but I know from a lot of feedback and comment from the public, concern about cats roaming in our reserves and parks, and there was requests from the public as to why we wouldn't be putting cat traps out. Is there an issue with that? I know that council has resisted because you would have to catch, for numerous reasons, mainly humanity reasons, you would have to leave cat traps out and have to check them regularly. Is that something that the city would now look at implementing?
Your Worship, we are, as part of the cat amendment local law, following this report tonight, be considering how we would manage the cats in those 10 or so reserves that have been identified, where they are of high bushland quality and have a lot of local fauna. So we will need to look at the current cat trapping program and possibly look at extending that cat trapping program. What the cat local law will do is allow for those infringements to take place, the controls and the city assist officers to be able to undertake their duties when it comes to cats, which previously they didn't have that full extent of that power. So that will be the cat local law was necessary in order for further controls to take place. So the trapping will be part of that program of considerations.
So there's 10 reserves that would cover. What about the parks that are under care and control of the City of Kwinana? Does this fall then within this new local law? I'm not being difficult, I'm just trying to understand, given that this has taken so long, we've had so much community feedback on this, and to get to this point, I think the community will be saying, well, those who have issues with cats wandering, what can be done by the council?
So to answer the question, it wouldn't cover all parks and reserves within the district. It would only cover the 10 identified key parks and reserves at this stage as an initial step, which of course can be added or removed to following the enactment of that law and subsequent reviews.
So why couldn't we include any park that is within care and control of the City of Kwinana? Or is that a question that we could put to the Joint Standing Committee?
Your Worship, there's 2 parts, I guess, of consideration, and it's something that we can bring before Council as a future amendment for you to consider the implications of that in terms of how we actually administer that. So you mentioned cat trapping as one of those programs that possibly would need to be looked at in the context of which reserves and how many we identify as cat control areas. If we were to increase it to numerous parks across the city or all parks across the city, that has a direct impact on our ability to patrol those parks and to manage our resources. So happy to have a look at that, but that obviously has a cost implication. The way that the city assist officers and our service would manage cats outside of those parks and even would be around that cat nuisance. So in private property or even in the public realm where a cat may be being a nuisance and being identified as such, whether through cat fighting or other means, then there is still opportunities for the rangers to step in and seize those cats, etc. But we can certainly explore the opportunity of how many reserves, how extensive we want to go in those cat prohibited areas. At this stage, we've focused on 10 as being manageable within the resources that we have. And being really aligned with the cat local law intent, which was really about protecting the wildlife rather than just the amenity impact on parks.
Thank you for that, and I do appreciate too that since this has come to light, not this particular item here, that we've embarked on very much an educational program, and I know that a lot of people are certainly now aware that they need to register their cats and that there was the potential for the cats not to wander and create a nuisance. So are there any other questions? Thank you. Councillor Brown.
Thank you, Your Worship. In the event that Council chooses to support or endorse the recommendation being discussed here, perhaps just for absolute clarity or in the simplest terms, moving forward, what is the city's advice to residents when it comes to allowing cats to roam beyond the confines of their property?
Through you, Your Worship, in preparing the next report and submitting that to Council for consideration, we'll certainly have to provide some further advice around how we engage, because we don't want to get mixed messages. We went out with one local law, we're now amending it to potentially change it to something else. So we'll certainly be communicating and engaging with our community around what's changed, what does that mean for you. So that is an important part of the report that will come back to Council, so we can certainly dive deeper into that with you also, make sure that what concerns you've been hearing and what clarity you need around that amendment we can certainly address at the time of that amendment being considered by Council.
And perhaps as a follow-up question, even with the potential removal of the clause that are being discussed here, there's still, I guess, negative repercussions, I guess, not just for flora and fauna, but perhaps your residents when it comes financially and whatnot, in regards to cats roaming beyond the confines of their property?
I'm not quite sure I understand the question.
I guess, even with the removal of this clause, it's still the city's position that cats shouldn't be roaming beyond the properties?
Basically, the cat local law is about controlling cats in our district. So it is about making sure people take the necessary steps where they can to manage the number of cats, register their cats. If they were to roam in accordance with the current local law that we have, we would, if it's not causing a nuisance, that we wouldn't be able to just grab it, if you know what I mean. Yeah.
Okay.
But we would certainly provide communication and advice around responsible cat ownership.
Okay, thank you.
Thank you. I'm also just wondering what role has Welga played in this, because I know when they were going through the puppy farm legislation, Welga came out very strong on behalf of the industry, the councils, and given that this seems to be a little bit of a sticking point with some of these local laws, I'm just wondering whether, when this matter comes back to Council, that we might consider an additional clause, depending on what the officer's report is, on whether we can either put something up through the zones or take something directly, seek advice from Welga in relation to, can they lead the charge, I suppose, or advocate for the sector in relation to this area. Thank you.
Just one more, Your Worship. So is this a request or is this an instruction which we have to follow?
Through you, Madam Chair, it's an instruction from the Joint Committee to undertake this.
Thank you. Good question. Thank you. Are there any further questions? If not, we have a recommendation. Moved Councillor Rouse, seconded Councillor S. Wood. Councillor Rouse, do you wish to speak on the item?
Just briefly, Your Worship, to say I'm disappointed with the instruction from the Joint Standing Committee on Delegated Authority to remove clause 3.1 and 3.2. It would be an understatement for me, to say I'm just disappointed. And I guess a lot of people in our community will also be disappointed with this decision, especially considering that both Narrogin and Northam have had those similar clauses approved. There was a statutory review of the CAT Act in 2019, which was tabled in Parliament on the 27th of November of that year, and that report identified several areas of improvement, and one of those was confining cats to premises. The state government has had 2.5 years to implement those improvements, but have chosen not to do so for whatever reasons. Why our laws, after consultation and submissions, did not propose to confine the cats, the intent of our wandering cat clause was ultimately the same, and that was to protect our wildlife, as you stated, Your Worship. We can still achieve this by reviewing our options and implementing a law of the prohibited areas. And of course, the limit of 2 cats will also have a knock-on effect of over time, albeit at a slower rate, to achieve this intent. Cats are still prohibited, and let the people understand this. The cats are still prohibited from causing a nuisance and from entering another person's property to cause that nuisance, whether that be annoying their dogs, fighting with their own cats, spraying or defecating. And so I urge all residents to keep reporting those incidents to the city so we can do something about and address people's concerns. So regrettably, Your Worship, I've no other option but to support this motion.
Thank you, and well said. Councillor Estwood.
Just that I'm confused about why the order came through that we would have to change this, because I really can't see any difficulty in confining your cats to your own property. Thank you, Worship.
Is that a statement or? Okay, thank you. Anybody wish to speak against? If not, I shall put it to the vote. All in favour? Against? So carried. Thank you. Item 18.2, proposed waste local laws. I do note Councillor Brown has picked up a slight error in the report on the second paragraph. The date should be 29th September 2021 to 22nd of November 2021, correct? Thank you. Are there any questions in relation to this item? We have a recommendation. Would somebody like to move that way? So I thought I'd have to read it afterwards. So I am required to read aloud the City of Kwinana Waste Local Law 2002 purpose and effect, which as follows. The purpose is to regulate the storage, collection and disposal of waste and refuse from premises and waste facilities in the city. The effect is, unless otherwise authorised, the storage, collection and disposal of waste and refuse within the city must be carried out in accordance with the provisions of the local law. Thank you. Do I have to read the whole lot? It's only the purpose and effect. Thank you. Do we have a mover for this recommendation? Thank you. Moved Councillor Winmar. Seconded to Councillor Kearney. Councillor Winmar, would you like to speak on the item? Thank you. Councillor Kearney? Anybody wish to speak against? I shall put it to the vote. All in favour? Against? So carried. And again, please pass on our thanks to the officers involved in preparing this City of Kwinana Waste Local Law. Thank you. There's nothing on item 19 through to 22. Item 22 are the reports of elected members. Deputy Mayor.
Just briefly, Your Worship, I attended the citizenship along with a number of other councillors. I also attended the couple with the cop this morning. I think I just missed you by half an hour, or after the photos were taken, I missed out.
I took the photos.
And I also attended the Emergency Services Thank You Sundowner on Thursday. And I also note in social media that Costco are saying that their new store in Casuarina will be open by the end of the year, Your Worship.
Thank you, and some wonderful imagery taken by council officers. Councillor Winmar.
Thank you, Your Worship. It was also an opportunity to continue on with National Reconciliation Week community events. And I was an honour and privilege to conduct the Sims Medal event, which was invitation to the local Aboriginal community and key community leaders to launch their Reconciliation Action Plan, and also for them to have a flag raising ceremony to the entrance of their premises in McDonald Street in Naval Base. Also another community event attended was at Harry McGuigan Park. It was an event coordinated by Ngala Yorga Wankan, We Women Talking. It was the Harry McGuigan Park renaming of a certain section of the park where a lot of this original Aboriginal families that came to the local area met regularly and congregated and introduced other members to family members that post mission days and getting in the area and help the family connection. And they wanted that area to be known Ngalang Mort Manja, which is our family's meeting places, which is an important part of reconnecting and reconnection to family at that particular time. Also attended the citizenship ceremony, and also it was a privilege to be with our community service volunteers for the emergency services to celebrate and acknowledge the important work they do in community at their community sundowner. Thank you, Your Worship.
And did you also attend the event at the Kulini Arts Centre? They had the virtual
Yeah, sorry, Your Worship. There was the National Sorry Day event, followed by the National Reconciliation Week virtual breakfast that was coordinated through Reconciliation WA. Interesting format. The first time they'd done it in that manner, they wanted to get the message out into community more broadly with the virtual breakfast. There was a component which was pretty well scripted and attended by some eminent Aboriginal people across Australia. And it was also good to see that with it being coordinated, there was also a local aspect for former resident Dr. Richard Wally, who acknowledged us on Noongar country. And they also went, there was a Yaru representation, there was some Yamaji representation, and there was some from the Great Southern as well. And post the televised event, it was a good opportunity to network with community-based organisations that were in attendance at that event, and it was well attended, and there was some very good feedback around the format, but still the jury's still out on whether that's a pretty good format to do it. But a couple of days after, it was an opportunity for them to reflect, and I think with the wider broadcasting of the message had the far more reaching impact on community, Your Worship.
Thank you. I'll wait for Councillor Rouse overview.
Thank you, Worship. I was just going to say the feedback on my pronunciation is that I need a few more lessons from you, Councillor Winmar. On the 3rd of June, I attended a JDAP meeting online with yourself, Your Worship, to consider the Coogee Chemicals storage tanks item, and today we also attended via online JDAP meeting for Casuarina Prison, extension of the new health building, extension of the gatehouse, both of which were approved. Also this morning I attended Couple with a Cop. Just like to thank Inspector Jeff Regan for attending, Acting Sergeant Tara Brown also, and it was great to meet our new OIC of Kwinana Police Station, Amber Harvey, Senior Sergeant Amber Harvey, who was in attendance as well. I'd also like to congratulate Abby, a local resident of Providence, who sent our Community Safety Officer, Sinead Gilligan, a message about some of the locals' issues in the area, which Abby was most surprised about the immediate response she got from Sinead and how professional Sinead was. So if you can pass on those thanks on behalf of the community and ourselves. Thank you.
And can I also thank you for representing myself at the virtual breakfast. The feedback that I'd heard was that the presentation by Stan Grant was really, really well received. Yeah, and thank you for that. Councillor Brown?
Thank you, Your Worship. So I also joined my fellow council members at the citizenship ceremony at Medina Hall, where we welcomed some of our newest Australian citizens and got to hear some of their stories about their journeys to date and, of course, some of their experiences living in the city of Kwinana. I also joined my fellow council members and representatives of the city at the Emergency Services Sundowner, where we recognised the achievements of our incredible volunteers. We also heard stories about their experiences over the past year and about how they do the amazing things they do for our community all year round. Individually, I fulfilled my role as part of the Coburn Sound Management Council at our quarterly meeting. Here we received an update from a variety of stakeholders on the Westport project. We also heard about some groundbreaking research happening in our region, including the revegetation of seagrass through the collection and redistribution of millions of seeds at a time from volunteers and researchers. And we also discussed the opportunities for and the benefits of collaborative research and more open access to data within our region and between us and other regions and organisations. And I think there's some really exciting things happening in that space. And lastly, since the last Ordinary Council meeting, I joined Councillor Matthew Rouse at the Lyric Award panel meeting of the judging panel, alongside other key stakeholders and representatives from the city. And I'm looking forward to celebrating the achievements of some of our youngest residents of Kwinana at the Lyric Award ceremony on Tuesday, the 21st of June. Thank you.
Thank you. Councillor S. Wood?
I attended the Housing the Community workshop put on by the City of Rockingham along with some other councillors. It was a workshop endeavouring to find solutions to the problems of being homeless, especially in our two local government areas. A large number of organisations, along with the local government areas of Kwinana and Rockingham, attended, and many innovative solutions were brainstormed. I hope that some of these ideas are able to be used in Kwinana and indeed passed on to the state government for their consideration. I also attended a national reconciliation event held in Harry McGuigan Park. The part of the park where this enjoyable event was held was formally given a new name being, I'll let you say it. This event was well attended, and after many stories were shared and a group of young dancers put on an entertaining performance, everyone had lunch provided by Rotary. It was a very happy and memorable morning. Thank you, Your Worship.
Thank you. Councillor Kearney?
Well, I attended all the same things, but I would just like to mention how talented our Councillor Winmar was, who played in a band with his family at the Harry McGuigan Park. It was a good day.
It was a good day.
Thank you very much. Thank you. There's no answers to questions which were taken on notice. Mayoral announcements, as tabled. I've been to all those events that everybody has mentioned. In addition, the Rockingham Kwinana Chamber of Commerce Business After Hours. Yesterday I was invited to the Honeywood Primary School to present to 85 Year 5 and 6 students. They were doing a topic on the Australian political system, and they were dealing with local government, so where best to start than their own local government. They were absolutely really delightful students, lots of interesting questions afterwards, and of course they all wanted to see the chain, so I bought it in a little case, and it's very, very well received. I was able to do up a little quiz on the weekend for them to give to their teacher, and we had some gifts for the winners of the 5 winners of the quiz, and every student received a bag with a City of Kwinana pen and a ball, which is probably going to drive the teachers crazy during recess. But it was really good, and I think it's great that schools do get involved in learning about their own local government, and I know that any of us here would be delighted to attend and present at any of the schools. I do note that Deputy Mayor is on the board of Honeywood Primary School, and I did speak with the principal because I know that some of the students I mentioned about the junior council, so maybe there might be an opportunity there. There was a lot of enthusiasm to be a junior counsellor, so that might be something you might want to raise with the school. Also, a big welcome to our new OIC, the Kwinana Police Station, Senior Sergeant Amber Harvey, who is in detectives at Armidale, and she doesn't live very far away, so it's really good that she has a lot of local knowledge and has brought many of her colleagues from Armidale along to the station, and she's really looking forward to her new role at the City of Kwinana or in the Kwinana District. And this afternoon I attended the West Australian Local Government Association Best Practice Governance Review Steering Committee meeting. And that meeting's role is to bring 3 options to the local government AGM on ways, a better model in which we can use WELGA and the zones. I know that we have had a review in 2019 and there was a move to try and simplify and streamline the zone process, but the membership wasn't keen. But we're bringing 3 options for consideration again, and it might be the case that we are efficient and effective as we are, but we do have a very large 25 member state council, an executive, and of course then you have the zone process, which is every 2 months, and we've been down this path before. How can we make it better? And again, it might just come back that this is as good as we can do with the system that we have. We've been looking at other large organisations and the way that they structure their governance and learning from them and seeing if there is something that we can do to again, simplify and make the process more flexible. So it was quite an interesting meeting, and we'll have a report coming back to us in 28th of June. But as I said, options will be going to our AGM in October. So they are my announcements. We have no confidential items. I thank you all very much for your attendance, and I declare the meeting closed at 6:21. 6:21. Thank you.